The rain hammered against the windows of our Seattle home, a relentless rhythm that mirrored the turmoil inside me. Alden, a 46-year-old architect, stood staring at the cold screen of my laptop, the words swimming before my eyes. It had started innocently enough, a misplaced charger, a quick search through my wife Ingrid's email, and then the avalanche. Ingrid, my beautiful, vibrant Ingrid, was having an affair. The emails were explicit, filled with a passion she hadn't shown me in years. The recipient was listed as Jesper project lead. I knew no Jesper. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a painful reminder of the life I thought I had. 20 years. 20 years we'd built together, brick by brick, memory by memory. Was it all a lie? We'd met in college, both architecture students, drawn together by a shared love of design and a spark that ignited into a roaring flame. Ingrid was always the more adventurous one, pushing boundaries, while I was the steady hand, the pragmatist. We balanced each other, or so I thought. Now, standing in the dimly lit study, the rain lashing against the glass, I felt a profound sense of displacement. I didn't recognize my life anymore. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was a stranger. I reread the emails, each word a fresh wound. They spoke of stolen moments, secret rendezvous, and a desire that burned with an intensity I hadn't seen directed at me in what felt like an eternity. Jesper wrote of how Ingrid lit up his world, how she made him feel alive. I felt like I was suffocating. I needed to know more. I couldn't confront Ingrid without solid proof. I spent the next few days in a daze, going through the motions at work, designing buildings while my own life crumbled around me. Sleep was elusive, replaced by endless replays of the emails and agonizing questions. Where? When? How could she? I decided to follow her. It felt like a betrayal in itself, a violation of the trust we once shared, but I saw no other way. I took a few days off work, claiming a bad cold, and shadowed Ingrid's every move. She worked as a marketing director for a tech firm downtown. Her routine was predictable: office by 8, lunch with colleagues, home by 6, or so I thought. On Wednesday, she left the office at 5, an hour earlier than usual. My heart quickened. I followed her as she drove across town, to a part of Seattle I didn't recognize, a neighborhood of trendy bars and upscale restaurants. She parked a few blocks away from a place called the Azure Lounge, a dimly lit bar with a reputation for intimate gatherings. I parked further down the street and watched as she walked inside. I waited, my stomach churning with a mixture of dread and anticipation. An hour passed, then another. Finally, I saw them. Ingrid emerged from the bar, her arm linked with a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, with slick-back hair and a confident swagger. Jesper. They walked close together, laughing, their bodies touching. They stopped in front of a nearby hotel and embraced, a long, passionate kiss that sent a shard of ice through my heart. I watched as they walked inside, the revolving doors swallowing them whole. I sat in my car, the rain blurring my vision, tears streaming down my face. The pain was unbearable, a physical ache that consumed me. I wanted to scream, to rage, to destroy something, anything, but I was paralyzed by grief. I drove home, a hollow shell of the man I once was. I couldn't face Ingrid. I couldn't look at her without seeing the image of her kissing Jesper. I spent the night on the couch, the television flickering, but I saw nothing. My mind was a swirling vortex of betrayal and despair. The next morning, Ingrid acted as if nothing was wrong. She made breakfast, chatted about her day, and kissed me goodbye before heading to work. The casual normalcy of it all was sickening. I wanted to scream, to confront her, but I needed a plan. I couldn't let her get away with this. I decided to hire a private investigator. It was an expense I hadn't anticipated, but I needed someone to gather irrefutable evidence, someone who could navigate the murky waters of infidelity with professionalism and discretion. I found a firm online, Eagle Eye Investigations, and scheduled a meeting with their lead investigator, a woman named Elara. Elara was sharp, efficient, and surprisingly empathetic. I told her my story, laying bare my pain and humiliation. She listened patiently, her expression unwavering. She assured me that she would get to the bottom of it, that she would uncover the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. Elara and her team worked quickly. They uncovered a pattern of deception, a carefully constructed web of lies that Ingrid had been weaving for months. Jesper wasn't just a project lead. He was a senior executive at her company, a married man with a reputation for exploiting his position. They had been having an affair for 6 months, meeting in secret, traveling together on company trips, and using work as a cover for their illicit rendezvous. The evidence was damning. Photos, emails, hotel receipts, credit card statements, everything pointed to a calculated and deliberate betrayal. Elara presented me with a thick file, the weight of which mirrored the burden on my heart. I was ready to confront Ingrid. I waited for her to come home from work, the file burning a hole in my briefcase. When she walked through the door, her face bright and cheerful, I felt a surge of anger. How could she be so carefree, so oblivious to the pain she had caused? "Alden, darling, I'm home," she chirped, dropping her bag on the floor. "How was your day?" "Don't," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Just don't." She stopped, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" I opened my briefcase and pulled out the file. I tossed it onto the coffee table, the thud echoing in the silent room. "Read it," I said. Every single word. Ingrid's eyes widened as she picked up the file. She started to read, her face paling with each passing page. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking gaunt and fragile. "Alden, she stammered, her voice trembling. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice cold and hard. "Just tell me the truth." She burst into tears, collapsing onto the couch. "It just happened," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just happened," I repeated, my voice laced with sarcasm. 6 months of secret meetings, stolen moments, and lies, and it just happened. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry isn't enough, Ingrid," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You've destroyed everything we built together. You've betrayed my trust, my love, my life." I walked away, leaving her sobbing on the couch. I went into the bedroom and started packing my bags. I couldn't stay there, not for another minute. I needed to escape, to find some semblance of peace, some way to rebuild my life. I rented a small apartment downtown, a temporary refuge from the wreckage of my marriage. I spent the next few weeks in a fog, numb to the world around me. I went to work, I ate, I slept, but I felt nothing. The pain was still there, a constant ache in my chest, but I had learned to suppress it, to bury it deep inside. The divorce was messy, acrimonious. Ingrid fought me every step of the way, claiming she deserved half of everything we owned. I refused to budge. She had broken our vows, she had betrayed me, and she wasn't going to profit from her infidelity. I eventually agreed to a settlement, a compromise that allowed me to retain the house and a significant portion of our assets. Ingrid moved out, taking with her the remnants of our shattered life. I thought that was the end of it, that I could finally move on, but I was wrong. A few months later, I received a call from Elara, the private investigator. She had uncovered something new, something disturbing. "Alden," she said, her voice serious, "I think you need to know about Jesper." She told me that Jesper had a history of exploiting women, of using his position to seduce and manipulate them. He had been involved in several similar affairs in the past, and each time, he had left a trail of broken hearts and shattered lives. But that wasn't the worst of it. Elara had discovered that Jesper was also involved in some shady business dealings, that he was using his company as a front for money laundering and other illegal activities. I was stunned. Ingrid had not only cheated on me, but she had also become entangled with a dangerous and corrupt man. I decided to take action. I contacted the authorities and presented them with the evidence Elara had gathered. They launched an investigation, and within weeks, Jesper was arrested and charged with multiple felonies. Ingrid was devastated. She had lost her lover, her job, and her reputation. She reached out to me, begging for forgiveness, claiming she had been blinded by love. But I couldn't forgive her. The damage was too deep, the betrayal too profound. I focused on rebuilding my life, on finding happiness again. I threw myself into my work, designing innovative and sustainable buildings that reflected my newfound sense of purpose. I started volunteering at a local homeless shelter, helping others who had suffered loss and hardship. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain was overwhelming, when I felt like I would never be whole again. But I persevered, driven by a desire to create a better future for myself, a future free from the shadows of the past. Years passed. I never remarried, but I did find companionship and connection. I learned to trust again, to open my heart to the possibility of love. I never forgot Ingrid, but I forgave her. I realized that holding onto anger and resentment would only poison my own soul. One day, I received a letter from Ingrid. She was living in a small town in Montana, working as a waitress. She had found a measure of peace and contentment, she wrote, but she would always regret the pain she had caused me. I read the letter, a wave of sadness washing over me. I wished her well, and then I let it go. I closed the book on that chapter of my life, and I moved on, grateful for the lessons I had learned and the strength I had found within myself. The rain had stopped. The sun was shining, casting a golden glow over the city. I looked out the window at the skyline shimmering in the distance. I had survived the storm, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before.